Tipi, the science behind a shelter that protected native nations. On the wide, windswept Great Plains, weather could shift from blazing heat to freezing blizzards in a matter of hours. Thunderstorms galloped across the sky. Winter winds cut like knives. Yet for hundreds of years, many native nations of the plains, such as the Lakota, Cheyenne, Blackfoot, and Kiowa, lived in shelters that kept them safe, warm, and mobile, the teepee. At first glance, a teepee looks simple. But behind its graceful form lies generations of scientific knowledge. Engineering, physics, climate observation, and aerodynamics, all woven into a structure that helped entire communities survive in one of the harshest environments in North America. A perfect shelter for a harsh land. A teepee is a tall, cone-shaped dwelling, made from long wooden poles covered by animal hides or canvas. The design developed among tribes who followed vast buffalo herds across the plains. These communities needed a home that was protective, comfortable, and easy to move. The teepee delivered all three. The cover, once made of many buffalo hides sewn together, and later made of canvas, was stretched tightly over a framework of poles arranged in a cone. The result was a shelter that could shield families from snow, rain, wind, and sun, all while providing an open space for cooking, sleeping, working, and socializing. But perhaps the teepee's greatest achievement was not just protection, it was mobility. Protection through mobility. The teepee was one of the most portable houses ever created. A skilled family could take one down in less than an hour. The poles themselves served a second purpose, once tied together behind a horse. They formed a travois, a sled-like carrier, used to transport the teepee cover and household items. This mobility offered several forms of protection. Following the buffalo, families could move quickly to new hunting grounds. Avoiding danger, entire camps could relocate to avoid rival groups, storms, or military forces. Seasonal survival, people shifted camps to find sheltering valleys in winter, or breezy riverbanks in summer. Mobility was not simply convenience, it was a survival strategy. And the teepee was engineered perfectly for that lifestyle. Engineering the cone. Once raised, the teepee became a remarkable example of natural engineering. Aerodynamics and stability. The teepee is not a straight, vertical cone. The back leans slightly into the prevailing wind. This subtle tilt, combined with the smooth sloping sides, allows strong winds to glide upward and over the structure instead of smashing into it. Instead of being pushed over, the teepee is pushed downward into the earth, increasing stability during violent storms. The egg-shaped base. The base of the teepee is not a perfect circle. It is slightly egg-shaped, with the fire toward the front and more living space toward the back. This shape improves airflow, strengthens the structure, and allows families to organize their living area efficiently. The ozan, a hidden layer of insulation. Inside many tipis, families hung a second wall of fabric, called an ozan or dew cloth. This inner liner created a gap between it and the outer cover. That trapped air, sometimes called dead air, functions as insulation. Just like modern double-pane windows or insulated jackets. In winter, the ozan helped hold warmth inside. In summer, it allowed hot air to rise between the walls and escape through the smoke hole. This simple but effective scientific principle kept the interior surprisingly comfortable year-round. The teepee is a natural ventilation system. One of the most brilliant features of the teepee is its built-in ventilation system. In the center of the floor, a small fire provides heat and light. When the fire burns, hot air rises straight upward to the smoke hole, a circular opening at the top. Outside, two long poles control smoke flaps that can be adjusted to the wind. This creates a convection system. 1. Hot air rises from the fire. 2. Smoke and heat escape through the top. 3. Cooler air is drawn in from the bottom edges and through the doorway. 4. fresh air circulates continuously, like an early air conditioning system. In winter, the fire kept the space warm even in sub-zero temperatures. In summer, rolling up the lower edges and opening the smoke flaps wide turned the teepee into a natural cooling tower, flushing out heat and insects. This was not luck, it was evidence of deep understanding of fire behavior, wind patterns, and airflow. Staying dry in storms. Rain on the plains could come suddenly and violently. The teepee met this challenge with smart design. The cone shape forces rainwater to slide quickly off the cover. Some poles were fitted with small pegs that guided rainwater downward between the walls, instead of letting it drip inside. In heavy storms, families dug a shallow trench around the teepee to divert runoff. Buffalo hides, when treated carefully, naturally resisted water. Later canvas covers, stretched tightly, also shed rain easily. The result was a dry, protected living space even during fierce thunderstorms. A house of stories and identity. While a teepee is a scientific masterpiece, it is also a cultural one. Many Plains nations decorated their tipis with meaningful images, battle victories, horse raids, dreams, or spiritual visions. These paintings turned the exterior into a living history book. The direction of the teepee's entrance also carried meaning. Many tribes placed the door facing east, welcoming the rising sun each morning. This had both practical value, avoiding the strongest west winds, and spiritual symbolism. Inside, the circle of the teepee represented harmony and unity. Families gathered around the central fire to cook, talk, tell stories, and teach children. The teepee was not just a building, it was the center of home and identity. Science in plain sight. Today, the teepee stands as one of the finest examples of indigenous engineering in the world. Its structure reflects a deep understanding of aerodynamics, climate, insulation, mobility, and fire management. Every pole, flap, and stitch is part of a system refined through centuries of observation and experience. The teepee reminds us that science does not begin in laboratories. It begins with people studying the world around them. And in the shadow of a teepee, the wind sliding harmlessly over its sides, we see not a simple tent but a living blueprint. A masterpiece of indigenous engineering where culture, science, and survival are perfectly woven together.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Blazing. Definition: blazing describes something that is extremely hot, bright, or intense. Often used to describe strong sunlight or heat. Example: the blazing summer sun made travel across the plains exhausting. 2. Blizzard. Definition: a blizzard is a powerful winter storm with heavy snow, strong winds, and very cold temperatures that greatly reduce visibility. Example: the family stayed inside the teepee during the blizzard to avoid the freezing wind. 3. Gallop. Definition: to gallop means to move very fast, especially the way a horse runs with all 4 feet leaving the ground at times. Example: the horses began to gallop across the open grassland. 4. Animal hides. Definition: animal hides are the skins of animals that have been removed, cleaned, and prepared for use as clothing, shelter, or tools. Example: the teepee cover was made from animal hides sewn together carefully. 5. Travois. Definition: a travois is a simple wooden frame made from long poles and used to carry belongings, usually pulled by a horse or dog. Example: the family loaded their supplies onto a travois when they moved camp. 6. Ozan. Definition: an ozan is an inner lining hung inside a teepee that helps control temperature and protect against wind and moisture. Example: the ozan helped keep the inside of the teepee warm during cold nights. 7. Convection. Definition: convection is the movement of heat caused by warm air rising and cooler air moving in to take its place. Example: smoke rose through the smoke hole because of convection inside the teepee. 8. Divert. Definition: to divert means to change the direction of something, such as water, air, or attention, away from its original path. Example: a shallow trench was dug to divert rainwater away from the shelter. 9. Runoff. Definition: runoff is water that flows over the ground after rain or melting snow, instead of soaking into the soil. Example: the villagers controlled runoff by guiding rainwater away from their homes. 10. Indigenous. Definition: indigenous describes people or cultures that originally lived in a place before others arrived from elsewhere. Example: indigenous knowledge helped native nations design shelters suited to their environment.
Comprehension questions. 1. What type of environment did the Tipi help native nations survive in? Answer: the harsh and unpredictable environment of the Great Plains with extreme winds, storms, heat, and cold. 2. Why was mobility an essential feature of the Tipi? Answer: Plains tribes needed to follow buffalo herds, avoid danger, and move seasonally for survival. A teepee could be taken down and transported quickly, helping entire communities relocate when needed. 3. What structure did families create with teepee poles for transporting their belongings? Answer: they made a travoy, a sled-like carrier pulled by horses. 4. Why is the shape of the teepee slightly tilted into the prevailing wind? Answer: the tilt helps wind flow smoothly over the structure, pressing it downward and increasing stability during storms. 5. What is the purpose of the egg-shaped base of the teepee? Answer: it improves airflow, strengthens the structure, and creates more usable space inside. 6. What is an ozone or dew cloth and what role does it play? Answer: it is an inner liner that hangs inside the teepee. The air gap between the liner and outer cover acts as insulation, keeping the interior warm in winter and cooler in summer. 7. How does the central fire contribute to ventilation inside the teepee? Answer: hot air and smoke from the fire rise to the smoke hole, creating a convection draft that pulls in cooler air from below and circulates fresh air. 8. How did families adjust the flow of smoke and air in the teepee? Answer: by using long poles to open, or angle the smoke flaps at the top according to wind direction. 9. What happens when the bottom edges of the teepee are rolled up in summer? Answer: more air enters from below, turning the teepee into a cooling system that removes heat and insects. 10. How did the teepee design help families stay dry during rainstorms? Answer: the cone-shaped shed rain quickly, poles could guide water between the walls, and trenches dug around the base diverted runoff. 11. What materials were commonly used for the tipi cover? Answer: traditionally sewn buffalo hides. Later, canvas became common because it was lighter and easier to transport. 12. Why did many tribes place the entrance of the teepee facing east? Answer: to greet the rising sun, avoid the strongest west winds, and bring morning warmth into the home. 13. How were some teepees used as cultural or historical records? Answer: families painted scenes of battles, visions, or important events on the outside, turning the teepee into a visual history book. 14. What scientific principles are demonstrated by the teepee's construction? Answer: aerodynamics, insulation, convection, climate adaptation, and portable engineering. 15. What is the central idea of the article? Answer: that the teepee is a highly sophisticated example of indigenous engineering, combining science, culture, and survival knowledge into a shelter, perfectly suited for life on the Great Plains.